Salutations! In this video, we will be looking at the events leading up to the Battle of Cannae, and the battle itself. Few generals have achieved such audacious military success against overwhelming odds. One such general was Hannibal Barca, whose name was etched in history alongside Caesar, Alexander the Great, Napoleon, and Scipio. Hannibal was the son of the Carthaginian general Hamilcar Barca, leader of the Barcid family, and general during the First Punic War, where Carthage and Rome fought for supremacy in the Mediterranean. The First Punic War lasted for 23 years from 264 BCE to 241 BCE, with most of the fighting being naval engagements, making it the longest continuous naval war in the history of mankind. The First Punic War significantly weakened Carthage's naval power and depleted its coffers. To compound the effect, Rome imposed stringent post-war sanctions and regulations on Carthage. The defeat at the hands of Rome was something Hamilcar would never forget. So when Hannibal was just a boy, he made him make a blood oath to avenge Carthage's loss and defeat Rome. After the First Punic War, with its naval power all but eradicated, Carthage expanded into the Iberian Peninsula. In Spain, the Carthaginians discovered two things that would alter their fortune. First, in its conquest of the peninsula, they realized that the Spanish were fierce fighters and would make valuable mercenaries. Second, Spain had rich silver and gold mines. Instead of rebuilding the navy, Carthage used the newfound wealth to build a formidable infantry. In 219 BCE, Hannibal occupied the Roman city of Saguntum. Although Carthage had subjugated most of the Iberian Peninsula, Saguntum was located in Roman-held territory, within the corner of the peninsula. Rome demanded that Hannibal leave the city immediately, or face the wrath of Rome's military might. At this pivotal moment, Hannibal had to decide risking another Punic War, or continuing peace as Carthage recovered from the First Punic War. In its warning to Hannibal, Rome offered him either the olive branch of peace, or the sword. Hannibal chose the sword. With Rome controlling the Mediterranean, Hannibal launched one of the most audacious and daring military campaigns in human history. In 218, Hannibal left Spain with an army of 100,000 soldiers, elephants, and officers. Hannibal would march his army across Gaul and through the Alps, which is a feat not duplicated until Napoleon crossed the Alps in 1800 to flank the Austrians at the Battle of Marengo. By today's standards, Hannibal crossing the Alps through hostile territory, while braving the heights and severe cold, remains a feat to marvel at. A large fraction of his army perished in this journey along with several of his elephants, whom he had planned to use to impress tribes and cities along the way, so that they would join his campaign. During the crossing, Hannibal lost one of his eyes, making him appear that much more fierce. The Romans were taken back by such a bold feat, but they sent an army to meet him at both the battles of Trebia River and Trasimene. In both battles, Hannibal had set well-disguised traps that the Romans fell for. The result was two crushing defeats at both battles. At this point, Hannibal, at age 27, had orchestrated two masterful victories against the superpower of the age. Despite these victories, none would be as infamous or famous as the Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE. Commanding the Roman troops would be the two co-consuls Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro. Commanding the Carthaginian forces would be Hannibal Barca and his brother, Mago Barca. Rome's army was made up of 80,000 legionnaires, many of whom had not seen battle. Accompanying them were 6,000 Roman cavalry. The battle took place east of the river Aufidus in a valley, which is extremely significant, because it forced the legions into a tighter, packed and deeper formation. This would serve Hannibal, who was outnumbered 2-1. The Carthaginian force was a mix of soldiers from all over Europe and Africa, many of whom did not speak the same language. The fact that Hannibal was able to command such a diverse group of soldiers is a testament to his leadership. His army was composed of Spanish, African, and Gallic infantry. Accompanying them were the finest cavalry in antiquity. The Gallic and Spanish horsemen were heavier cavalry and could break most opposing cavalry. With them were the famous Numidian light cavalry, who were known for their elite skirmishing and speed on the battlefield. Hannibal deployed his troops in an inverted arc formation. Hannibal's plan was to allow the Romans to push his center back, giving them a false sense of victory during the battle. As Hannibal's center was continuously pushed back, he planned for the Romans to commit more and more troops to the center in hopes of breaking Hannibal's line. Hannibal placed his best infantry, including himself, in the center. As the center gave way, Hannibal planned for the African infantry on the wings to envelop each Roman flank, as they committed more and more troops to the center. Moreover, Hannibal's victory would also depend on his superior Gallic, Spanish, and Numidian cavalry defeating the opposing Roman cavalry. After beating the Roman cavalry, Hannibal's cavalry would turn and crash into the Roman rearguard. The battle started with a cavalry skirmish that worked its way past the Aufidus River. The Roman legionaries approached en masse and crashed into the Carthaginian infantry. As Hannibal predicted, his center began to give way, and the Romans committed more and more troops to the center. While his elite infantry held the line, Hannibal's superior cavalry engaged in fierce fighting against the Roman cavalry. Despite a valiant effort, the Roman cavalry broke and fled the battlefield. Under overwhelming pressure, especially in the center, Hannibal's troops continued to hold the line as more and more troops were committed to the center. As more troops were sent to the center, the more packed the legionaries became, which denied them of one of their biggest strengths, maneuverability. This neutralized many of the legionaries' ability to effectively fight. On schedule, the African infantry on his flanks began to implement a double envelopment and encircle each Roman flank. Soon after, the German, Spanish, Gallic, and Numidian cavalry slammed against the rear of the Roman army. Hannibal encircled the entire Roman army. The next several hours saw ferocious fighting, with over 60,000 Roman troops dying in one day. The carnage on the battlefield cannot be understated. At the Battle of the Somme in World War I, the British suffered similar losses at the hands of machine guns. The Battle of the Somme is still considered the worst defeat in their history. More than 2,000 years earlier, with swords and spears, Hannibal had inflicted a similar defeat on the Romans. Surrounded, as many of the Roman soldiers attempted to escape. Roughly 14,000 were able to flee, including Varro and Paulus. Against all odds, Hannibal had masterminded one of the most decisive military victories in history. Notably, his tactic of using an inverted arc with the following double envelopment was used by great generals for the next 2+ millennia. Today, Hannibal's strategy at Cannae is still taught in the military. Aftermath. In the wake of his most decisive victory, many of Hannibal's generals urged him to march on Rome. Hannibal, fearing that his numbers were too few to lay siege to Rome, decided not to. According to the historian Livy, Hannibal, leader of the Numidians, famously said to Hannibal, "You know how to win battles, but you do not know how to take advantage of them." Hannibal would spend the next 15 years fighting in the Second Punic War, winning almost every battle he fought. However, in 201 BC, Rome invaded Carthage itself and Hannibal was recalled to lead the defense. A 17-year campaign in Italy saw Hannibal achieve victory after victory, but he could not take Rome. Hannibal would eventually face his defeat in 201 BC at the Battle of Zama against Scipio, whom history would later dub Scipio Africanus. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please like, share, or subscribe, as it would be a great help and keep you notified of new content.